Good morning, good evening, good afternoon, good afternoon, good whatever time of day it is. Thank you for tuning in to Conversations with Dr. Don from the Tualatin Valley Community Television Studios in beautiful green Beaverton, Oregon. We bring you the Conversations with Dr. Don show. For your first-time viewers out there, Conversations with Dr. Don is an ongoing series of one-hour standalone talk shows where I interview interesting people like most of you out there about who they are as unique, one-of-a-kind individuals and about whatever it is that we decide to talk about. And the title of tonight's show is The Hype and Reality of Globalization. We arrived at that title because my guest tonight, to my right here, is John Francis, who I've known from a number of different venues or gatherings where people of similar interests and persuasion, and we've talked about him coming on the show, and I've been eager to get him on because he knows so much about stuff that I feel strongly about, and I'm impressed with, well, you'll see what I'm talking about as the show goes on. I'm a little nervous because we've not talked on camera before, have we?
Yeah, once I was on, we talked about India for a little while.
Yeah. You know, 80 years old, remember, the brain goes, yeah. But thanks again for coming back on.
Well, that's okay. I know you've got a lot of programs to think about.
Yeah. And how are you feeling right now?
Oh, just great.
How come I'm the only one that's ever nervous and my guests are always just great?
We're just good at faking it.
Yeah, very good. So that's a big subject, and I've not had anybody on before to talk about globalization and things close to it, and they've touched on it, but from our back and forth before the camera started rolling, I'm sure we're going to have a pretty broad coverage and a pretty interesting show. But first of all, we'll go the typical route of basic bio stuff, I call it. So we find out who you are and how it is that you have the belief and interests and that you do about globalization and whatever else we'll talk about. So is that your full name, John Francis?
Yeah, well, John A. Francis, John Arthur. I worked for quite a few years for the Cooperative Extension Service over at the University of Idaho and then at Washington State University. So my background's in politics and economics and then in journalism. I ended up doing a lot of television work for the last 15 years or so, and I retired a little while ago and moved to Portland because I really like Portland.
Television work? What kind of television work?
Primarily documentaries and instructional television. You know, how to cure leaf smut and how to take care of cherries, or what do you do with kids at risk? This kind of stuff. In other words,
producer or
yeah,
host?
Producer. Yeah.
Behind the camera and in front of the camera.
Both. At the university, you don't have that kind of luxury of being able to swap back and forth and have much in the way of a crew. We do studio shows sometimes, but mostly it was documentary, instructional type stuff.
So you know about this stuff, huh?
Yeah, I enjoy video. Yeah, at one time I was thinking it'd be nice to be a movie director. You know, it'd be a kick, but it's pretty hard to break into. I did some experimental films on the side.
So what else about you that would give us an idea about who you are personally?
Well, journalism, I think, was my background, and that's where I started. I was a journalist for a number of years, and I spent altogether 7 years in Africa working as a journalist, and there was some pretty exciting stuff there. I got up into the Congo when it was blowing up, things like that. And then more recently I spent 6 months over in India teaching, and I really saw the effects of globalization there. This is something that's interested me in some time.
7 years in Africa,
yeah,
and 6 months in India.
And some other, you know, traveling around, bicycling a lot in Europe. But
we need a lot more time than that.
I'm really worried about the state of the world. You know, I mean, that's the whole thing that you see a lot of this in India, for instance, tremendous amounts of farm suicides and the collapsing of the agriculture business because, again, of globalization. And I saw the same thing in Mexico. My wife and I went down to Mexico for a while, and we saw really, you have no idea when we're sitting here in this nice, comfortable Oregon, what's going on in a lot of in the rest of the world. Things are getting worse than we realize, faster than we realize.
What is
you
it that
know?
happened to you when you were small that gave you this kind of interest and concern? It sounds like your whole life has been dedicated to this kind of pursuit and learning and being concerned with people who are
Well, I've
abused.
always been interested in new things. That's why I became a journalist. But this concern now about what's going on in the world is something much more recent, because it's occurred much more recently. We're talking about something that's only been going on for 20 years or so, and the effects have been absolutely devastating. And all you have to do, I mean, Don, all you need to do is take a plane ticket, go to southern Mexico, look around for a week. I mean, make your hair stand on end if you had lots of hair, you know. And,
It's getting thin.
you know. But no, really, I mean, you sit there and you're shocked, you know, and you talk to other people. Or bring them down. They're shocked. God, I had no idea what's going on.
What's shocking about it?
Well,
when I see it.
Okay, let me tell you what happened. I'll just give you an example.
Sure.
Okay, we're talking globalization. This is where you have what they call free trade around the world, no tariffs, no protectionism. Everybody can trade everywhere. This is what's caused all of the jobs to migrate to China, for instance. You know, it used to be if you're an American company and you wanted to use the American market, you had to produce in America, right? Well, that's gone now, so you can export the jobs. Okay, Mexico, a little while ago, a few years ago, under the NAFTA, which is the North American Free Trade Agreement. Okay, all the tariffs came off of corn. Well, you know, U.S. produces a lot of corn, and it's subsidized. Okay, so in comes U.S. corn, flattens the Mexican corn industry, just flattens it. There's these hundreds and hundreds of valleys of little corn farms. Every one of them closes, just like that. And all of the little farms, all of those little farms in those valleys, they all of those little towns, they all close up. They have to. The schools, the churches, the cafeterias, everything goes.
Why?
Because the corn industry has collapsed. American corn has come in. These little corn farmers can't sell their corn anymore because
Why?
the American corn that comes in undercuts them.
Undercuts
them. The market vanishes.
Why can it do that? Why
because it's subsidized by the USA.
Subsidized by the U.S. So the corn farmer in America is subsidized by the U.S.
Right. Not only that, but of course there's gigantic economies of scale. You know, these are people growing 5,000, 10,000 acres of corn. You know, it's all mechanized. You've got a lot of indirect subsidies on fuel and on weather forecasts and on seed types and all the rest of it. At any rate, you can dump your corn in Mexico cheaper than the Mexicans can grow it. Okay, and the Mexican corn industry collapsed, and all of these little towns vanish. All of these farmers have got and the townsfolk, they've got no place to go, so they go to the slums of Mexico City or whatever, Guadalajara, or they go to and they live in the slums, or they go to the maquiladoras. That's those little free trade areas along the border in a few places that are another part of globalization.
So they have no income, no way of feeding their families.
If they go to maquiladoras, there's all these companies there where you can get jobs making TV sets or blue jeans or cars, but the wages are very low and there's a lot more people than there are jobs. The taxes in these maquiladoras don't go to the Mexican government. These are free trade zones. So there's no infrastructure, very bad infrastructure, virtually no clinics, no schools, no clean water, nothing. And the rest of these people who are totally miserable and they've got they cross the border and they come into the U.S. That's why there's been this enormous increase in cross-border traffic. These people have been displaced. A lot of these people you'll find who are arrested and sent back are former corn farmers.
So this is one of the effects of globalization
but
on a local level,
but there's more. But there's more.
Course,
All right. Okay. You get to you go to these valleys. These valleys are totally depopulated now. They've been bought up for a song by either one big landowner or maybe an agribusiness from the United States. And they grow vegetables for the American supermarket. With one or two people. It's totally automated, right? There's no environmental laws that are enforced, and so they can use as much chemicals as they want. They can mine the aquifer as much as they want. They don't have to worry about erosion. And after 10 years of mining that land, they've reduced it to a desert, and then they write it off for taxes.
What about the Mexican government intervening on the behalf of the workers, of the Mexican workers?
Oh, dream on. You know,
I didn't know you were going to put it so bluntly.
okay, no, I mean,
Of
yeah,
course.
don't kid yourself. You know, these people are part owners of that kind of thing. They bought into this. You know,
The government.
well, the top people in all of these countries, and especially in Latin America, the top people who are the top industrialists / government leaders, etc., they benefit from this. I mean, if a big foreign company comes in, a couple of these cabinet ministers become directors of it right away. They got lots of fees, they got lots of commissions. There's a lot of money to be made at the top. But at the bottom, the people are impoverished. You've got the creation of slums, the creation of deserts, the loss of all these markets. It's a disaster, Don, an absolute disaster. You go to Jamaica, I'll give you another example.
It's a disaster for who in Mexico?
For the bottom 90% of the people.
But they're the top 10%
The top
who are
10%
making
of
out
the
like
people,
bandits.
making out very well indeed.
Okay.
Very well.
So that's globalization in Mexico.
That's globalization in a nutshell. I mean, it's different in every country. You go to Jamaica, for instance, there's the World Trade Organization, which eliminated all of these tariffs. I'm simplifying now, but to a large extent. So in comes the foreign milk, which is cheaper. In comes the apples, in comes the chickens, you know, from abroad. It costs more to make a lot of these things in Jamaica because they don't have any oil there. They've got to import everything. But at any rate, all of the local agriculture collapses. The Jamaican farmers end up working in these big hotels as busboys or chambermaids, etc. And all of the profits, all of this tourism business goes back to headquarters, Hilton and Marriott, etc., and out of Jamaica. So what you've got is a type of colonization again, you know. Now you get into India, the Indian agriculture.
WTO. Say what the WTO is.
Okay, that's the World Trade Organization.
Yeah, I mean,
and that's
a whole range of ability.
And it has all these rules.
I may ask you a question now and then to be sure that everybody.
Well, sure, yeah, because I just tend to ramble along. And the World Trade Organization is kind of the institution that's in charge of this. The World Trade Organization over the years has created this gigantic list of rules of things that you can or can't do, and all the countries have signed on to it. It was actually drawn up by large corporations for the benefit of large corporations. They don't want competition, and they don't want protection. Now that's understandable from a large
corporation. So if the large corporations are doing well, then the trickle-down theory will work, and the workers then will do better than they would do without the World Trade Organization managing their lives.
No, that's the hype. That's the hype.
Yes.
In actual fact, what happens is the money is sucked upwards into those large corporations and leaves everybody else, like those Mexican corn farmers, like those Jamaican farmers, like what's happening in India. They're left poverty-stricken. Their livelihood has been taken away.
Like what's happening in India. Say a few words about what's happening in
India
to do with globalization.
Right. In India, for instance, again, we'll deal with agriculture and the agricultural products have come into India, and yet India can't export its agricultural products very well because they don't meet certain standards. You know, in other words, they've got certain very strict standards in the WTO about, insects in rice and this kind of thing.
Sure.
So this subsidized agriculture, such as subsidized rice, subsidized corn, comes into India.
From who?
From the U.S. and from Europe.
Okay.
And the Indian agricultural market, because of that, is depressed. And these farmers who have got virtually no money in the first place find themselves running out of money totally. They get involved in borrowing money to try to keep going and buy this more expensive seed, which they've been talked into buying, Monsanto seed. That you can't, and you've got to use new seed each year. You can't save your seed, etc. It's as I say, that's a really complex one. But when we spent a lot of time in India, and the number of farm suicides is, well, nobody knows for sure. The low estimates, government estimates, are like 1,500, 2,000 a year. Unofficial estimates are 10 times that. It's because.
So why are they committing suicide?
Because they just are so far in debt, and it's so impossible to get out of it that they're just totally depressed and they commit suicide. It's really quite a
tragedy. And your average American can't really appreciate someone that depressed and that helpless and hopeless that they end their own life.
I suppose not. You know, well, I don't know. I imagine some farmers, American farmers, may have committed suicide, but it's a different culture, you know.
Yes, of course.
But at any rate, as I said, let me just give you, I'll go into another, because we've been talking about agriculture, let me go into another example of something, okay?
Of course.
Okay. Now, I got this out of the Wall Street Journal some years ago. They did a World Bank, a study on a World Bank project. Again, it was in Mexico. It was a big steel company. It was a big steel production facility. And imagine a bar graph in front of me, $1.2 billion, right? The first, and you slice it off from the top. The first 100 million, nobody knows where it went. You know, it's obviously the top government people, etc. The second 100 million is all in. The World Bank puts together a huge consortium of banks to raise this kind of money for a particular project. So the second slice of 100 million, goes to all the commissions and the fees and this kind of thing to all the banks who are doing this. And then the third 100 million from the top goes to the large-scale analysis companies, the ones who do the big planning for this on a national basis. From 900 down to 400, all that money goes to American companies who make the cranes, the big furnaces, the tracks, all this kind of stuff. Then you're down to, from 400 to 300, you're getting into the main planning. This is all the blueprints and the designs and everything. And from 300 down to 100, from 300 down to 0, you're going into, first of all, the skilled laborers like the electricians and the plumbers, down to the truck drivers, and down to the guys with the shovels and everything.
So what's the project we're talking about
it's
now?
It's a steel mill. Huge steel mill, right. Huge steel mill.
In
and that's
India.
how all, no, this is in Mexico.
In Mexico.
And this is just another example. Okay, so all the money's gone now. You've seen how it's been sliced up, right? And the money has to be repaid. It's a loan, remember. This is not some kind of a gift, and it's got a high interest rate.
That's a loan. Who are they paying to?
They're paying back to the World Bank, to all the banks who. It's a bank loan. It's a bank loan from the World Bank, which has been arranged through a bunch of different banks.
How does the IMF fit into this?
Well, it doesn't right now.
Another story. All right,
it's another story. Okay, so you've got $1.2 billion. Most of it's been sliced up, gone to top people or gone to American business, and at the bottom, the last 300 million out of it are going to Mexicans. Right, the Mexican planners and then workers. But all that money has to be repaid by those people at the bottom, all of it. They only got a little bit of it, but they have to pay it all because the rest of these people don't pay taxes. In fact, half of them are in America. The money went right from America, right through the Mexican bank, and right into American pockets again.
Isn't that free enterprise or capitalism?
So what's happened is all of that money's being taken out of the pockets of those people down at the bottom, and it's going into the pockets of industrialists and of top government people. Okay, so after a while, they haven't gotten enough money to pay that back. I mean, they have to have it paid back by the Mexican government. Cuts back on schooling, cuts back on medical, cuts back on roads, cuts back on all kinds of stuff. Eventually, because there were several other projects of the same type at the same time, Mexico can't pay it back anymore. They've squeezed everybody as much as they can squeeze. And so the Mexican government says, geez, we don't have any more money. You know, we need to borrow some more money so we can pay this back. And everybody says, oh, we're going to bail out Mexico. Well, you're not bailing out Mexico, you're bailing out the banks who made the loans. They're the ones who have to worry, you know. And so they get bailed out, and the IMF comes in, the International Monetary Fund, and they say, oh, well, we'll lend you some more money, but we have a thing called structural adjustment, and that is where, okay, you've got to sell off your you've got to stop spending so much money on hospitals, you've got to sell off your hospitals, sell off your power systems. Privatization, right. Sell off your bus systems, sell off all this kind of stuff. And these are fire sales, you know. And of course, the top Mexican people who are involved in this, they become directors of this, they make their cut as well. And all of those possessions which were at one time owned by everybody everybody, all the citizens own the bus systems. They own the power systems. They own this and that. They don't have it anymore.
That's
Suddenly they're
the
poor.
The commons is privatized.
Right, it's been privatized, right. And so that's what's happening. And that same kind of story with different details is happening all around the world. All around the world, and it's leaving, especially in the third world, and it's leaving people poverty-stricken. Most of the people, it's very, very lucrative for the people up at the top.
So globalization, the hype, and reality. So we're getting a little flavor of what that's about. So before we continue on, I've gotten a high sign that says I better take a break here, or I'm going to be in trouble. So it's time for a break now for about 3 minutes. In a moment, we're going to put up on the screen a few panels that show information that you may want to make note of during the break. You may want to get pencil and paper now. Let me tell you about the Dr. Don Show broadcast schedule. For you viewers who live in the Washington County part of the Portland, Oregon metro area, Conversations with Dr. Don shows a broadcast 5 times each week. Typically, a new show is first aired on a Tuesday and is rebroadcast on the following Friday through Monday. You can get Conversations with Dr. Don on the internet. You can tell your friends to watch Dr. Don shows on the internet anytime by going to video.google.com and entering Conversations with Dr. Don. And I want to tell you about some key Washington, D.C. phone numbers, in case you think you need to call your representative or the White House and tell them how happy or unhappy you are with what's going on, tell them what you want and don't want your representatives to do, and take down those numbers, because we need to speak out and not be silent at what our government is doing for us or to us, for us. So they want to hear from you in Washington, D.C. I promise you, they really do. So now we're going to put those panels up on the screen, the appropriate panels, and we'll take a break for a bit and be back a little more and continue with my friend John Francis about globalization, the hype, the myths, and so on. Yes, we're back. Thanks for staying tuned. For you viewers who missed the opening of the show, Conversations with Dr. Don is an ongoing series of one-hour standalone talk shows where I interview interesting people, like most of you out there, about who they are as unique, one-of-a-kind individuals, and we talk about what we think might be of interest to both us and you, our viewers. And my guest tonight, my one guest, John Francis, and I are going to continue talking about the hype and reality of globalization. And John has done traveling in different parts of the world and has explored globalization and its impact, and he's done a thorough job so far. I'm very impressed. So let's continue on. Where shall we go now, John?
Well, you know, I've talked about this this growth of poverty in that's taking place in most of the world, certainly in most of the third world. And what effect is that growth of poverty going to have? I think until you really get into a society where there's a lot of poverty, you don't realize quite how pathological it can be. I saw this, I guess, a lot in India when I was there and in Mexico, but you can see it just about anywhere. I mean, even in parts of the United States.
What do you mean by pathological?
Okay, when people become more poverty-stricken, they become a little bit more desperate, and when they become a little bit more desperate, they start becoming more predatory, and so you get a society that starts to become more hostile, and it has a lot of strange things going on in it. For instance, one of the ways people deal with real hopelessness is they become religious. Fanatical, perhaps, you know, they become fundamentally religious, or they may start using drugs a lot more, you know, to escape from reality. The more enterprising ones become criminals because there's lack of money. The police don't get paid much. The judges don't get paid much. Therefore, the police become corrupt, very corrupt.
Is that going on in these other countries now? We were talking about earlier?
Oh yeah. I remember the first day I was in India. And I didn't know too much about India. It's supposed to be the world's largest democracy. We were driving up this hill and we came across a car that had overturned. And this driver who was taking us to the school, you know, inched by, and I said, gee, I wonder if the cops are coming. And he said, oh, they hope not, because if the police come, you have to bribe them. You have to pay them bribes. So
in India.
Yeah, and this is in India. This is a democratic country. This is the same in the Congo. This is the same in any poor country. Because in Mexico, you've got to pay a fair amount of money to become a policeman, you know, and then you've got to pay that loan back. I mean, it's like going to college or something. You know, you may have the job now, but you've got to pay back your loan. And so it's kind of a free enterprise thing.
So this is because of globalization?
This is because of poverty. This is what happens in
poverty is a result of globalization.
And globalization is increasing poverty.
Okay,
this is the problem,
right.
you know.
Okay.
But poverty, the more poverty-stricken a society is, the more difficult it is to live there. You see these terrible things, little girls being sold into prostitution, boys, you know, little kids with their arms broken, begging on the streets. This, you know, I mean, things that just make you as a Westerner shiver. And yet this is growing. This is becoming worse. Poverty is growing enormously in the third world. These gigantic cities, gigantic slum cities. The UN just did a big report on slums of the world. Right now, 1 out of every 5 people in the world lives in a mega slum, a huge slum of some sort.
1 out of every 5?
Yeah, and pretty soon it's going to be 1 in 4. You go to these
cities.
And
a major reason for this is the kind of globalization you're talking about?
Yeah, the destruction of the small farms. You turn agriculture becomes increasingly concentrated in the hands of a few people, great big cash export crops instead of food that feeds the local people.
Cash export crops because the corporations want...
That's where the money is, you know, that's all.
For them?
Yeah.
But not for the guys who are working on...
Well, no, everybody else goes to the cities. I mean, you get this huge migration to the cities. So you get these giant cities now, like Lagos and Rio and Jakarta and Mumbai. I mean, these places are enormous. You have no idea what these slums are like. Friends of mine, I mean, I saw some slums in India. I didn't get to Mumbai. A friend of mine was in Mumbai, and he was in a nice apartment building overlooking one of these giant slums. Nobody knows whether whether there's 1 million people or what there. These people are so poor in that slum that to have a cardboard box is to be a rich man.
Is that so?
Yeah,
I didn't know
mean,
it was that
yeah,
bad.
oh, it's terrible. You ought to, I mean, Nairobi, you can go, if you wanted to do a tour of the slums of the world, boy, I tell you, you'd really see something. And these things are growing.
What's the answer? What's the solution?
Well,
What's the remedy?
In practical terms, that'll actually happen. I don't think there is one, because the powers that most of the money in the world, a great deal of the money in the world, is concentrated in very few hands.
Yes.
There's something like 900 and some billionaires in the world, for example. Second largest collection is in India, by the way, believe it or not.
Really?
Yeah, next to the U.S. This is according to Newsweek.
I would just say something to the effect there's nothing that can be done.
Well,
that's learned helplessness.
Well, yeah, okay. No, I mean, I could come up with a solution.
Well,
I mean, you're going to have to take the money that's there, and there's a lot of it, and you're going to have to put it into works projects so that people can earn $10 a day, and you'll have to have gigantic projects building clean water and clean sewer lines, reclaiming agricultural land and establishing small farms again, establishing factories, and giving some kind of protection in these areas.
How can you do that?
Well, you'd have to have political will or military will to do it. And
how do you do that?
See now, exactly.
We got to keep going.
Right now, who controls the countries? The very rich
Okay.
control the countries, including this country.
Okay.
Right. So,
what do you need to do?
well, unless you get it, you got to have. I suppose you get a bunch of very altruistic rich people, and maybe they can turn it around. Do you think the U.S. Congress is really going to turn around?
So what's the other option if you don't have a group of altruistic rich people? What's the other option? How are you going to turn things around?
Well, I don't know. You can't do it without money. You can't do it without wealth. I mean, people aren't working for nothing.
So how do you get the wealth?
I don't know. I mean, you tell me. I mean, you know where it is. It's as if you
How
were
about
short
in
of water.
Norway and Sweden and some of those socialist countries? Do they have the kind of conditions you're talking about now in
not
Africa?
at all. Not a bit.
You know why that is?
Yeah, I do.
They don't have globalization?
No.
And they have socialism
No,
rather than...
it's not socialism.
What is it?
It's higher taxes.
Higher taxes.
Higher taxes.
Higher.
Let me tell you. Okay, let me illustrate. Right, because we've learned. Hey, higher taxes. That's really bad. Actually, the average person in America pays quite a few taxes. Companies don't pay much in the way of taxes, and they've got this. They've had a propaganda campaign going for years against high taxes. Actually, you and I pay pretty high taxes, and we're paying for Iraq and all the rest of it, but the companies don't. Here's what happens in Sweden and Norway and some of these other countries in Northern Europe. They have higher tax rates at the same time, and you may not have as many savings because you have higher tax rates, but you have free university education, you have free health care, you have decent pensions. You don't need as much money. But I'll tell you the difference. Let me just illustrate the difference between, let's say, Nicaragua and Norway. Okay, now let's say you don't have a particular lot of talent, or you're not a highly skilled person. And where are you going to start working? Would you rather go and start working in Nicaragua or Norway? And I'll tell you, Nicaragua, you're going to have a lot rougher time. No education, no health care, etc. Yet Nicaragua is as rich a country or richer than Norway. It's got sunshine, it's got rain, it's got good soil. Norway's kind of cold and gray and stony by comparison.
Sure.
And yet the Norwegians live really good and the Nicaraguans don't. And you know why? Because almost all of the wealth in Nicaragua, which is a very wealthy country, is concentrated in the hands of a very few families. In Norway, because of high taxation, it's spread around. Everybody gets health care. Everybody gets free university education. Everybody gets pensions. And whether you go to rich countries like Indonesia or the Philippines or El Salvador or anything else, you'll find the same thing. They're rich countries. They're loaded with natural resources. They've got great climates, great soil, and they live in enormous poverty, except for the top 5%. And then you'll find them in enclaves with private police forces, and it's getting to a certain extent like that in the United States, the third worldization of the United States. I just came back from Palm Desert a while ago. Enclaves, everybody's in walled cities. You've got to keep out the riffraff. You know what I mean? And that's the same thing. And you'll find that in every country. If you go and you've got friends in Guatemala, or you've got friends in Brazil, or you've got friends in Malaysia, the same thing will happen when they get there. They say, now don't go out at night, you know, stay in my house, etc., etc. And there's these giant slums around, and you don't dare go there. You don't dare, man, because they're you know, predatory areas. But these 5 or 10% live in this wealthy enclave, and that's where the money is. And are those people going to give it up? No. So I don't think you're going to get the money. But if you had high taxation, you don't get that. You see, the thing is, we have taxes now. If you want to have like a school levy, you've got to vote on it, right? How many people would vote for $300 million a week spending in Iraq? How many people, if that was up for a vote on the ballot, on a referendum? Of course they wouldn't. You know, look at the money that we're spending in Iraq. I mean, we got nothing for it. Look at the money in Iraq or Afghanistan, or the tax breaks that Bush gave. All of these things are go into the pockets of the richer people. You know, there's a tremendous osmotic movement of money upwards, and therefore there's no money down at the bottom.
Wait a minute, John. Come on. Money moving upwards. That's a euphemism for something that's more direct and more outrageous. Money doesn't do a damn thing. Pardon me. Doesn't do a thing. It's the people in charge who are running the show that arrange things such that money moves upward. They get richer and the poor get poorer. And we can analyze and talk about what's going on, globalization, and I'm not hearing anything on what needs to be done so that these people's plight can be different and can change. We just can't throw up our hands and say, hey, that's it. Are you your brother's or sister's keeper?
Well,
Are
I mean, you know,
are we supposed to be as human beings?
Yeah, I think so. But I mean, there's a practical reason for that. Poverty and environmental degradation are inextricably combined. You can't separate the two. In the poor countries, the environment is in terrible shape. People are cutting down the trees because they need the firewood. People are killing anything they can get their hands on because they've got to eat. You take the environment in India is just a total mess. Go and take a look at the poorest countries in the world, like Haiti. It's virtually a desert now. You know, I mean, all of the greenery is gone, everything. So the environment is being destroyed because of this poverty. And to sit there and say, well, you're poor and I'm not, is as smart as saying, ha ha, your end of the boat is sinking. You know, we're all part of the world, and the environment is being destroyed. You know, and so and if we don't do anything about it, it'll continue to be destroyed.
What can we do about it?
Well, I mean, what can we do about it? Yeah, I mean, we could, you know, obviously reverse it. We could try to reverse.
How do we do that?
Oh, very good question.
Yes, we better have some answers here.
Yeah,
We're sitting here talking about how awful things are and how bad things are. We better have some answers, and ordinary citizens like us need to have some answers so that we can call Washington or the White House or representatives or the newspapers or somebody and do something.
Well, people have been trying for years. You're not getting anywhere on it. It's gone backwards.
Well, people were trying for years to get the right to vote, and women for the women's suffrage, and civil rights for black people, and we decided to go to the moon. We split the atom, and humans can, what is this, Darwinian?
Take a look at the last 30 years. Take a look at the last 30, let's say since Reagan, and see who's been winning. See who's, you know, government isn't the solution, government's the problem, etc., etc. In other words, it's been slow evolving towards a kind of a gangster type rule. Whoever's got the muscle or who's got the money runs the country, right? And they're running the country. They're running it for their benefit, not for the benefit of the general public. And how do you change that?
Yes.
Well, I don't know. How you change it.
Well, we better know.
Well, I mean, people give it a try. Once in a while, you'll get a politician.
Let me try something.
Yeah.
How about electoral reform?
Good idea. Excellent idea. Yeah,
How
let's
about getting
do it.
the money out of the political process?
Hey, that'd be great.
How about eliminating lobbyists?
Wonderful.
How about doing away with the electoral college?
Yeah, excellent. Excellent. All great ideas.
How
great
about
ideas.
wealth taxes? How about raising the income tax up to the level it was many, many years ago, like for the richest people in the country, up to 93 or 94%.
Absolutely. Be great ideas. And you know, and while we're at it, let's fly. You know, I mean, let's levitate or something. I mean, that's fine. It's a great idea. There's a great ideas.
Oh.
You try accomplishing them. Really, who's going to do it?
I'm sad
Who's
to hear you
who's
say
who's
that.
going to change the taxes? Who's going to do it? The guys in Washington?
The things I said a little while ago, those things changed when people decided they had enough.
Really?
And they, you remember the Vietnam War era? I used to march down Wilshire Avenue with my little kids on my arms. We were
I did that
some
too.
part of 1% of the population who started. Somebody, I'm not bragging, somebody started, and pretty soon it picked up. We can't just say, well, it's happening, there's nothing we can do about it, because of things will get worse. And pretty soon people like you and I, who are fairly comfortable in our middle class lives, will be, or our children will be poor like the 2 or 3 classes below us, if I may. We've got to do something.
Well, we've certainly got to try, and I've been trying. I've been trying to organize. I've gone around to these different countries, etc. And you just take a look at trends. I mean, the thing is, it's not a matter.
So hopeless,
there's nothing. It's nice to have a desire to do it. I mean, geez, I have a tremendous desire to do that kind of thing. But you try moving this stuff. Try go. Okay, then let's say you want to reform taxes. I mean, that's a really important thing. Reforming taxes, reforming. You should take money out of politics. Right. Okay.
Yes.
So let's do it.
Okay.
Fine. How are you going to do it? Nader tried. Nader went around for 2 years and did really well. And when he finally tried to get on TV in 2000 for the debate, where he could have been seen by 40 million people instead of 2 million people, the cops stopped him before he could get into the, even though he had a ticket to the debate. That's where I think free speech ended.
So
right
what
there.
a human being needs to do is attempt to do what's right. And if they knock you down, you get up again. And maybe the 99th time you were knocked down, the 100th time you succeed. But because it seems impossible is not the reason to not attempt and resist oppression and aggression.
There's a lot of people who are trying. I mean, there really is. You
But
know,
to say, what's the
20%.
use? That's defeatism. That's learn helplessness.
Hey, no, it isn't. Just go ahead and join. I mean, there's really good organizations in this, right in Portland right now. There's the Alliance for Democracy, David Delk's people. You know, they're trying to fight. There's the Oregon Fair Trade Committee that's trying to overturn the WTO. There's all these organizations. They've been there for years. They're going to keep working at it. They're trying. Have you seen any changes? No. But they're working at it. They're going to keep working at it. Are they going to succeed? If I had to put $100 down on it, I'd say they won't. But I mean, I would love to be proved wrong. I'll try as much as anybody else. But I mean, let's be realistic, for God's sake.
Oh man, you make it hard for me here. Being real.
Hey,
no,
man,
wait a minute.
know,
being realistic is to resist with every fiber of my being oppression and unkindness on the part of the ruling elite. And for me to say, oh, what the heck's the use? I'm going to lose. It isn't just me. I have 5 daughters. I have great children and grandchildren and fellow human beings. I'm a humanist. And I have a responsibility for all living things, and human beings particularly. And I know that there are certain things that I'm going to do that I won't see an immediate result in my lifetime, but it's going to have an effect in the future. What if Martin Luther King would have said, what's the use? I'm not going to have things no.
Well, that's
I'm getting
good,
carried
though.
away here. I'm getting too passionate. So my point is, we need to not lay down and say, what's the use? We're going to lose anyhow. You've done tremendous travel and learning, and you've seen how, I can see how it is you might think it's useless, but I think we need to have a better attitude than that.
Well, I don't think it's a matter of attitude. I think it's a matter of knowledge. You know,
Okay.
I mean, I feel like I'm pretty knowledgeable now about the electoral system. I've
Yeah.
been involved in campaigns. I've helped people run. I know what happens in Washington and what doesn't, and what happens in Salem and what doesn't. I keep abreast of all of these kind of things, and it's very nice to say, "Oh, keep working. You're going to change the world." You know, sure. You know, there's no shortage of people like me. You see the laws coming in now. You know, let's say you're going to change the United States. You want to change the United States, right? You want to do it by elections? Okay, but you don't have very much money, right? So you're going to have a hard time with elections. You want to do it by demonstrations? That's fine, but they're bringing in all these new laws now. Security, hey, you know, what are you, Al-Qaeda or something, you know,
Yeah,
etc.
terrorists.
You want to get on TV and persuade everybody? Try getting on TV. It's not that easy. Hey, and O'Reilly will just take you
But
apart.
you're obliged
right?
to keep at it.
Sure, you can keep at it. That's fine. There's nothing the matter with keeping at it. Doesn't mean you're going to succeed. Anybody who says, "Oh, you keep at it, you're going to succeed," is just living in
Success
a dream
may
world.
not be in my personal lifetime. I have a human responsibility. Humans have that responsibility. You should.
Hey, you're talking to a worldly cynic now. You know? Yeah, I mean, you know, I've tried a lot of this stuff. It's not that I've tried a lot of this stuff so much as I've talked to a lot of people, and I deal with a lot of people who try. You know, and they're working, and they'll never give up. They won't. There'll always be a 10 or 15% in this country who are working and working and working for change, and there will be another 15 or 20% who have got their hands on the levers of power and who are going to do everything possible to keep those middle ground people from doing anything or from understanding what's going on. And they're doing a pretty good job.
So
of that
following
right
your
now.
logic, there's nothing that we can do about globalization. And nothing we can do about the poor people in the world getting poorer and more desperate.
Well, I mean, there are things that could be done, yeah, but will they get done? I'm a lot more skeptical about that. Yeah, I mean, the World Trade Organization could be a wonderful organization if they actually opened up the negotiations and they put in the environmental rules and in workplace safety rules and in organizing workers' rights rules. Then all of a sudden you really would have some kind of a world government. Those things have been left out, and they were deliberately left out. And if you have a way, Don, that you can go to Washington and say, we're going to open the World Trade Organization negotiations again, and you can get all those countries together, and you can get a U.S. trade rep to do this. Hey, you know, maybe you know, you could change the world. Best of luck.
All right. Martin Niemöller. Remember Martin Niemöller, Nazi Germany?
Oh yeah,
Pastor
right.
Martin
That's right.
Niemöller.
The fellow, yeah, who was killed.
Remember?
eventually. Yeah.
Yeah. They came first for the communists, and I didn't speak up because I wasn't a communist.
Oh, was he there who said that? Oh, okay.
Then they came for the Jews,
Uh-huh.
but I didn't speak up because I wasn't a Jew. Then they came for the trade unionists, and I didn't speak up because I wasn't a trade unionist. Then they came for the Catholics, and I didn't speak up because I was a Protestant. Then they came for me. And by that time, no one was left to speak up. So speaking up is doing what you can,
Absolutely.
because if you don't, people like us in succeeding generations are going to be like those peasants you saw in India and in Rio and those countries in the world. We're obliged to resist.
And they're trying, you know, a lot of them are. I'll give you an example. When we were in India, for instance, a large Coke, well, it was a local bottling company, I think a subsidiary of Coke, came in and started pumping out water from an area, you know, a couple of million gallons a day. 10,000 farms, after a little while, their boreholes started to go dry, etc.
Well, they don't
But the relevant cabinet official in that state government, he had signed off on it. It was totally legal. Eventually the farmers tried to take action because they weren't getting any results whatsoever from their government, because the government, you know, was being paid off. And so they tried, you know, like you say, hey, resistance, boom, in comes the army, in comes the police, and flattens them. So, I mean, they tried.
Is America an empire today?
Oh, yeah.
Do empires last forever?
No. But the thing is, the collapse is always a pretty dirty thing, you know. And particularly, do we have that kind of luxury of time now with the environment the way it is, and the new technologies, you know, the toxics and all the rest of it? I don't know if we do have that kind of time.
I'm not sure time is a luxury in the context of what we're talking about now.
I think time is short.
It's looking at the reality of the situation, the seeming impossibility of having things change. It seems to me that radical change in these kinds of situations occurs when people say, I've had enough and I'm not going to take it anymore, and they take to the streets and shut down the money-making capacity or ability of the ruling elite. And I'm not for violent revolution, and for constitutional taking back our country and our government. I'm not a revolutionary. I don't want to get in trouble with the government. Okay? I'm not advocating violent revolution or terrorism, but I'm saying we have got to take back our government and have it be responsive and responsible to the ordinary citizens.
When you're most governments, and I'm not just talking about the U.S., but India and the different places now, they're more sophisticated than that now. They know you've got to have an external enemy. They've got to turn that anger outwards, and so you turn it against the Hindus, you turn it against the Muslims, or if you're Milosevic, you turn the Serbs against the Croatians. You get them mad at each other. Yeah, out there. That's the problem. You're desperate. You're hungry. There's your problem. Kill them. You know,
it's a classic method of taking care of potential enemies or people you don't like. So let's you and him fight.
Yeah,
that's a big game.
And so in the United States, for instance, we had the communist menace for many years. Hey, that was great. And have you noticed that as soon as the communist menace went away in '89, suddenly there was this big search for another enemy. And thank God they finally found one. They got now Al-Qaeda. You got the terrorists to look out for. Always looking outwards, because if you didn't have an enemy out there, you wouldn't put up with the stuff that's going on.
You might see who's really causing your plight.
Yeah. So I mean, it's classic. You know, there's nothing new about it. And so when you say the world's going to get better, people are going to overturn the governments, I doubt it. I think there'll be a lot more wars, that's all.
Haven't people overturned governments through the centuries? Haven't they?
But mostly they've been going against other, and there'll be civil wars too. But it's not going to be peaceful, in other words.
Empire, peaceful or whatever means. It historically shows it has happened. There's no reason to believe that it won't happen again.
Let's hope
won't happen again. And I'm resisting the kind of oppression and economic strangulation that this runaway capitalism is doing to ordinary citizens in my country and citizens in other countries around the world. This so-called globalization and free enterprise and WTO and World Bank. So you got me all steamed up.
That's good. Well, go out and do something. Go hit somebody.
No, that's what they do, and I didn't think you would say that. It's close to time for us to stop. My notes say here, again, keep those pens and pencils handy, because you may want to jot down something that will show you in the closing credits. Thanks for watching. I invite you to give us feedback, both positive and negative, about any aspect of the show. I mean it. It helps us to give you a better show. And forgive my impatience with my friend here, because I'm wanting him to give me some magic solution to what I think is wrong with our country and society. And don't laugh. That is my director in there. He's laughing at me. Neither you, Rick. I love my crew here. Great crew. My email address is friendlydon@AOL.com. And a few public service announcements. I'd like to always tell you about the Alliance for Democracy. David Delk, our co-chair. There's a national organization, Alliance for Democracy. We work on political and social issues that are concerned for everybody. And we also have, there's my email address on the screen right now. How about the Alliance for Democracy? Can you put that up? I guess, yeah. I'm going to kill you in there. There's the website and the phone number for the Alliance for Democracy. Very hardworking people to working for things that are of concern to ordinary citizens. And then there's a local chapter of the Alliance for Democracy. That's a David Delk chapter. Call and come to our meetings about twice a month. and really a dynamic operation. We don't just talk, these people work hard and lobby and whatever. And ACLU, we can't forget the ACLU, the American Civil Liberties Union. I've been a member of the ACLU for many, many years. Thank goodness for the ACLU. Without the ACLU, I think our civil liberties would be all gone by now with this past administration in the past. The ACLU is concerned that if you think that law enforcement has stopped you or some friend of yours because of how they look, rather than for some real reason, then the ACLU wants to know about it. There's a hotline, the ACLU hotline. Put that one up, please. Call the ACLU and let them know that you think you've been harassed by law enforcement. I'm not anti-law enforcement. And I think I got to hurry up and say goodnight. So thank you for watching out there. Thank you so much. And thank you for coming on, John.
Me, my pleasure.
And oh my goodness, I almost forgot KFC. Not Kentucky Fried Chicken. Dr. Don's KFC. Kind, friendly, and charitable. Be kind, be friendly, and be charitable to you, and you, and you, and you, and you, and you. Thanks again for watching. Good night. Sweet dreams.